Hello, my name is Christopher Sleboda. I'm an associate professor of graphic design at Boston University and co-founder of Drawdown Books. Today, I'll be talking about a cover series I art directed and curated during my tenure at the Yale University Art Gallery, where I was the director of graphic design between 2005 and 2020. The gallery is actually a museum and is widely credited as being the oldest university art museum in the Western Hemisphere, with an encyclopedic collection of almost 250,000 objects. I was a graduate student at Yale from 2001 to 2003, and I was well aware during that time that the museum did not actively collect graphic design. Paul Rand is considered by many to be one of America's greatest graphic designers. He taught at Yale from 1956 to 1985, and the Yale University Art Gallery does not hold any works by Paul Rand in their collection. Students in the Yale School of Art in the photography, sculpture, and painting program could walk across the street and see historical and contemporary exhibitions of the mediums they were studying at the museum, complete with interpretation and analysis, and graphic designers could not. When I started in my position as the head of design for the museum, I kept this experience in the back of my mind and became committed to finding ways to thoughtfully bring graphic design into the museum's programming and collection. One of the first projects I redesigned was the calendar of events. It was a perfect opportunity to highlight graphic design and strengthen the museum's relationship with contemporary designers. The format I inherited was a hybrid poster brochure. Once unfolded, the original design had a large image featuring a work of art from the museum's collection along with the calendar. The flip side had textual details about all of the gallery's events. There were many great posters produced over the years, but because there was dated information on the poster side, it was destined to be discarded. In my redesign, I looked at how I could use the same exact trim size and the same amount of paper while pivoting to a poster moment that would be more evergreen, without expiration, so that if someone loved the image, they could easily frame it and display it, without a date anchoring it to a specific moment in time. The move also emphasized the timelessness of the art objects. And at the same time, by moving some of the content to the flip side, I decided to lean into the temporality of the content to actually celebrate it in a graphic way. My concept was to have different graphic designers render custom typography for the seasonal information. For example, fall 2005, and the name of the museum, Yale University Art Gallery. It's a mouthful, and part of the reason why I felt our logo, 4 lines of stacked, all-caps text set in Tobias Frere Jones's beautiful Gotham, could use a little shakeup. The budget for the calendar was full color on one side and 2 colors for the text side. Because I knew I wanted the text to be expressive, monochromatic, and a representation of graphic design history, Ed Fella came to mind immediately. I had no budget to speak of, and I shot an email off with the grand plan. The print date was also fast approaching. Within 48 hours, Ed Fella called me up and said he'd love to create something. He mentioned he was talking with Nike about a project, but he'd do this project instead. 1 week later, the original paste-up artwork arrived via FedEx. We had previously adopted PMS 306, a shade of cyan, as our official museum spot color. It was Yale, so of course there was a natural instinct to embrace the color blue. But I quickly found that pairing that bright blue alongside most pieces of artwork presented an issue. It was going to either clash, distract, or overpower most artwork. With the collection that included work from ancient times to Basquiat, the cheery bright blue was just not going to work. I walked around the museum looking for inspiration and quickly noted the metallic gold frames present in the museum's early European galleries, and how they again appeared in the early modernism rooms and even showed up in early American art. I matched the hue to PMS 871 metallic gold and found a perfect partner for any art that would be featured in our poster. This meant that the typographic contributions could be rendered in black and gold. Not everyone loves gold. Experimental Jet Set explicitly said that they weren't fans of the color, but it's a unique ink that simply can't be simulated with inkjet printers or color laser printers. I thought it could make these poster calendars feel special. And so I finalized my brief. I'd invite designers who had previously demonstrated a strong, distinctive, or personal typographic approach and ask them to render the season, year, and museum name in black and gold ink, with an emphasis on the typography in the composition. After Ed Fella created a cover, I had a great opening to invite other designers. Many jumped at the opportunity. Next up was Alan Horry, who had taught the course Type as Image, one of my favorite classes at Yale. I liked it so much, I managed to find a way to take it twice. Like Ed Fella, Alan Horry also received his MFA from the Cranbrook Academy of Art, and it felt like a natural progression in the series. The third entry was by California designer and art director Michael Leone, whose wildly optical forms and bold radiating lines felt like staring straight into the sun, perfect for a summer calendar. Leaning heavily into the California design scene, Jeff McFetteridge said his studio name, Champion Graphics, was inspired by a painting in the collection by Stuart Davis. McFetteridge created a hand-drawn visual spectacular that brought Richard Scarry to New Haven. Each letter is rendered as a city building, doorway, or tunnel. When he turned in the final art, McFetteridge said, "It's on the edge of legibility, but reading the text is possible." At this point, I realized I could invite multiple designers to create different covers for the same season. This meant that if any one design fell through, I would still have at least one cover to go to press with. Deanne Shook's cover merged hairline strokes, solid counterforms, and barely visible flora for spring 2007. Ryan Waller, founding member of Other Means, submitted an illustrative spring contribution featuring a seed packet, dotted trowel, and a paintbrush. Around this period, I became very interested in the studios featured in the Happy Pets book, Pathfinder, which featured a young cohort of Swiss designers. So I was extremely excited to feature DIY and their photo construction cover for summer 2007. And after 2 or 3 unanswered invitations, Dutch design legend Karel Martens finally relented and offered this iconic rendering for fall 2007. Hand-drawn type was gaining momentum in the US, and Mike Perry, who had just published his book Handjob, a catalog of type with Princeton Architectural Press, offered this explosively scrawled celebration of type in fall 2007. Antoine and Manuel, the French graphic design team with roots in fashion and product design, were seduced by the flower form for spring 2008, embedding ornate letter forms on flower petals. American designer Garrett Morin's nostalgic, family-friendly contribution was constructed out of torn paper, combining playful letters with ice cream cones, birds, boats, and trees. Swiss designer Jörg Lenny and his project Hector were visiting the Yale School of Art, so we worked up a plan with then Yale MFAs Daniel Harding and Thomas Selizna to have Lenny's spray painting machine create the spring 2008 cover on some soon-to-be renovated walls within the museum. I had acquired all of the necessary permissions, and we spent a rainy Saturday afternoon spray painting inside a museum. On Monday morning, when the security staff were doing their rounds, it became apparent that news of the installation had not been shared with everyone. For a few hours, leadership staff at the museum watched the security footage of me, Jörg Lenny, and 2 graduate students vandalizing the museum walls, until they realized they had in fact given us permission to do so the week prior. Para's ER and 008 ligatures are perhaps my favorite details in the entire series. His distinctive letter forms are a triple threat. They sing, they dance, and they perform. Seymour Quast from the legendary Pushpin Studios utilized one of his fighter plane drawings with hand-rendered type neatly and discreetly emblazoned on the wings and fuselages. Hawaiian-born New York designer Todd St. John was a visiting critic at the Yale School of Art. I had long admired his animated videos of cut wood and his obsession with wood grain. I wondered if he might cut some typography out of wood, and he replied with a slab serif stencil. Damien Karel made a typographic Rube Goldberg machine. And Ike Koenig of Berlin's Hort created a typographic still life, complete with fruit and a gazing ball. Chicago artist and designer Cody Hudson offered his modular geometric typography for spring 2009. Studio Morose brought their electric, energetic, and frenetic hand-drawn letters using the two-color palette to great effect. I particularly love the overlapping, overlaid, and split forms, with gold and black each vying to be seen. Kevin Lyons was all smiles. New York studio labor cut the text. Emigre made the letters twist and turn, and French artist Jean-Julien made his plans clear for the summer. Non-Format designed an intricate cover that required the gold and black plates to be printed in a specific order so that the gold would overprint on top of the black. Stephen Harrington made a three-dimensional composition that cast a shadow. Genevieve Gaucler's creatures are connected to the type. Experimental Jet Set rearranged the letters at our expense. Christoph Niemann hid Fall 2009 in plain sight and exhibited his affection for New York City subway routes. Julia Bourne was inspired by the museum's tetrahedral ceiling, designed by Louis Kahn in 1953, and created her typography by folding sheets of paper. Linda van Deursen rendered a giant spring by way of a scribble. Mario Hugo played with dimension and perception. Notice the A and the R, simple geometric forms aligned from our vantage point. This photo is evidence that Wim Crouwel just might be the coolest designer ever. He was the head of design for the Stedelijk Museum for 22 years and made some truly remarkable work. This is a painting by Léger with bold crisscrossing lines, and this is the exhibition typography Crouwel made in 1957. Claes Oldenburg makes giant puffy sculptures, and this was the inflated typography Crouwel made for the Oldenburg catalog. You might think a Jackson Pollock is chaotic and random, but Crouwel showed us there is an underlying logic and order to Pollock's drip paintings. And this is perhaps one of the most famous pieces of graphic design from the last century, Crouwel's Vormgevers. It hangs on the walls at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And while Yale doesn't have this piece in their collection or have it on display, in the summer of 2010, Wim Crouwel created a cover design for us. David Carson sent 20 options and wondered if we could print all 20. It was hard to choose. Looking back, I wish we found a way to print all of them. Alex Truchot made a script with sweeping flourishes. Jonathan Zawada's contribution looks back at you, or perhaps is winking at you. The double L in fall plays with illusion. Justin Fines uses pattern and type to create a dense playground of form. Notice the detail of the A and the G. It became increasingly clear that when people thought of Yale, they thought about books. Olympia Zagnoli was another designer who couldn't resist book spines as a surface for type. In spring 2011, I heard Matthew Carter was getting ready to release Carter Sans, the first typeface bearing his own name. I sent him all the covers and asked if he'd like to feature the new typeface. He said he didn't think he could do a good job because he's not a graphic designer. I had an idea that the cover could be a simple type specimen, and Matthew agreed. Peter Buchanan Smith, former art director of Paper magazine and famous for making beautiful axes, made his typography with shaving cream. Raoul Wouters utilized conditional design and a collaborative type exercise in order to create this playful 2011 cover. Mark Owens' letters do double duty with the double M's in summer also rendering the year in Roman numerals. Metahaven's 2011 design contemplates currency in the museum. Kazunari Hattori's design explores both flatness and dimensionality. Michael Beirut of Pentagram intertwines Gothic black letter, reminiscent of the masthead from the Yale Daily News. My favorite cover was created by Korean designers Sulki and Min, who rendered Fall 2011 using the Yale University Art Gallery's logo. Ahn Sang Soo's expressive brushstrokes are literally too big for the page. Colophon Foundry presents their type centered and all caps. Nicholas Troxler's design springs into action with dots bouncing in between the letters. Speaking of dots, Mike Essel created a Connect the Dots, combining blocky sans and scripted letter forms. A real sack tracks out a condensed sans and drops the logo into place. Atelier Muesli created a summer maze. Andre Bito tied his letters into knots. Todd James doodled with bubble type, and that slab serif Yale font. Il Studio used rhythm and pattern. Paul Serre had his intern knit a typographic sweater for a cozy fall season. Manuel Miranda utilized a rounded sans and played with scale and weight. Common Name used glitch and texture, and Glenn Cummings overlapped and rotated type within a grid. And after about 60 covers, the printed calendar and poster, which was produced from 2005 to 2012, went on hiatus. The museum was reopening after a major renovation and everything was being rebooted. Somehow, though, these covers continue to resonate. They were collected, featured in books and magazines, and written about online. These typographic designs were a way to get graphic design into a museum that wasn't particularly interested in the discipline. And the covers prove that to have a consistent brand, one needn't stick to a single typeface. These covers had a consistent and recognizable approach to original and expressive typography that allowed and encouraged fluid typographic form, unified by the black and gold, and visually reinforced the message that they communicated. Each designer shared an interpretation of what an art museum is or could be, as well as what the different seasons of time represent. Letters are extremely versatile, durable, and elastic. These covers embraced their moment in time while also nodding to how ephemeral that moment was. Ultimately, I think the set of 60 covers produced between 2005 and 2012 presents a small snapshot of typographic possibilities in the first decade of the 21st century. It's a collection of work that features designers from around the world at various points in their careers, with luminaries and legends alongside rebels, upstarts, and graphic pioneers. Thank you.